The Russian column never makes contact. Engines warm, radios crackle. A handful of vehicles line up on a dirt road that has carried dozens of assaults before. From the ground, everything feels routine. The men inside the vehicles think they have a window, maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. Above them, the air is already crowded, not with jets, not with artillery fire, with small, quiet machines that have been waiting longer than they have. Somewhere 2 kilometers away, Ukrainian infantry are still in cover. They haven't moved, they won't need to, because this fight is already being decided by people who aren't anywhere near the front line. A recon drone locks onto the lead vehicle and holds position, steady enough to count antennas. Another drone drifts higher, acting as a relay, extending control beyond where Russian jamming usually works. A third watches the flanks, not for tanks but for motorcycles, the telltale sign of a fast assault forming. Nothing explodes yet. This is the part that matters, because by the time the first Russian soldier realizes something is wrong, the attack has already failed. The radios go silent, the column stalls, one vehicle burns just enough to block the road. Another disappears in a clean surgical hit. 2 minutes later, the sky is empty again. No infantry charge follows, no Ukrainian armor advances. There is no counterattack to film, the assault simply stops. This is the kind of engagement that doesn't look dramatic on a map, but it's the kind that breaks an army's rhythm. And it's exactly why NATO planners started paying attention to one Ukrainian formation in particular, because this is not how war is supposed to work. Western doctrine was built on a clean sequence. Recon finds the enemy. Artillery shapes the battlefield. Armor pushes. Infantry clears. Drones fit somewhere into that chain, usually as helpers, sensors, or precision add-ons. What the Azov Brigade has built quietly breaks that sequence. Here, drones don't support the fight. They are the fight. Everything else waits behind them. That reversal is a shock, not because drones are new, but because Azov treats airspace like a physical barrier. Before a Russian soldier can see Ukrainian infantry, before a tank can close distance, before artillery can find a rhythm, machines get there first. And they stay there. This creates a problem Russian commanders were never trained to solve. How do you force close combat when contact itself has been replaced by denial? Azov operates as part of Ukraine's National Guard. That matters because it means their mission is not theoretical experimentation. It is frontline survival in some of the most pulverized terrain of the war. Urban ruins, tree lines shredded into stumps, roads that exist only because vehicles still try to use them. In this environment, Azov didn't just adopt drones, it formalized them. A dedicated unmanned systems battalion emerged, not as a side unit, but as the first layer of contact. The goal was brutally simple: stop Russian assaults before Ukrainian infantry ever has to meet them. That simplicity hides the real complexity, because doing that consistently requires more than flying explosives. It requires changing how time, distance, and decision-making work on a battlefield. Russian assaults rely on tempo. Even small pushes depend on speed, coordination, and the belief that once movement starts, pressure can build. Azov attacks that belief. Before an assault forms, drones watch the staging. Before vehicles roll, antennas are identified. Before infantry moves, logistics patterns get logged. The kill is not the point yet. The pause is. Once the lead element hesitates, once the column compresses, once communication degrades, the entire push begins to rot from the front backward. That's when the strikes come. Not loud, not cinematic, just precise enough to turn movement into confusion. And when confusion replaces momentum, attacks collapse without ever becoming battles. Azov's answer is a buffer zone where machines operate constantly and soldiers don't. It isn't empty, it's layered. Recon drones overlap. FPVs wait instead of rush. Relay drones extend control beyond where Russian jamming expects it to work. No single loss breaks the system. The effect isn't just physical. Russian troops don't feel hunted. They feel observed. And observation changes behavior long before firepower ever does. Picture the sequence from above. A dirt road cuts through a battered tree line. A truck, 2 armored vehicles, a fuel carrier. Nothing exotic, the kind of movement meant to feel safe. A drone shadows the column from an angle that avoids the sun. Another tracks radio emissions rather than vehicles. A third waits near the only bridge ahead, hovering low enough to blend into clutter. The order to advance comes. The lead vehicle crosses an invisible line. That's when one FPV dives, not into the center of the column, but into the escort vehicle's roof. The road blocks. Radios spike with chatter. A second drone cuts the relay antenna. No explosion, just silence. From 2 kilometers back, Ukrainian infantry never moved. They don't need to, because the fight ended in the air. NATO understands drones. What it didn't expect was a brigade running them as a primary combat arm with discipline, restraint, and iteration built in. This isn't swarm chaos, it's measured pressure. Azov doesn't flood the sky unless there's a reason. Volume exists, but control matters more. Each drone is part of a decision loop designed to deny Russia the ability to build confidence. That's the uncomfortable lesson, because confidence is what doctrine runs on. And Azov is quietly draining it out of Russian assaults before they begin. So far, this story sounds almost unfair. Machines versus men, cheap drones versus armored doctrine. But Russia doesn't sit still. Electronic warfare thickens, decoys appear, motorcycles replace trucks, assaults fragment into smaller, faster probes designed to slip through gaps. And this is where the story gets more dangerous, because Azov doesn't respond with a single answer. It responds by changing the question. Russia reacted quickly. Electronic warfare moved forward. Jammers thickened the air. Smoke became routine. Assaults broke apart, trading trucks for motorcycles and mass for speed. On paper, it made sense. If drones rely on signals, drown the signals. If columns get hunted, stop forming columns. If strikes need time, move faster. For a short window, it worked. That window taught Azov something important. The real weakness wasn't jamming, it was predictability. Russian countermeasures assumed the enemy would keep asking the same questions. Azov changed the questions instead. Russian electronic warfare is real, powerful, aggressive, designed to drown the sky in noise and force drones out of the fight before they ever get close. Azov's operators ran straight into it, and then they went around it. Instead of relying on one control method, the drone layer fractured into behaviors. Some aircraft flew traditional RF. Others climbed high enough to relay signals beyond jammer coverage. A few went silent entirely, tethered by fiber optic lines that carried control through physical cable instead of air. Those fiber-controlled drones weren't perfect. They were fragile, hard to fly, rare. But that wasn't the point. They didn't need to replace everything. They only needed to break the assumption that jamming guaranteed safety. Once that belief died, Russian EW stopped being a shield and started becoming a guessing game, and guessing is lethal. When jamming failed to fully restore momentum, Russian units changed shape. Heavy vehicles pulled back, assaults became lean, motorcycles, ATVs, small groups moving fast through gaps drones weren't supposed to watch. This was clever. It also created a new vulnerability. Small units don't need much to be stopped. They just need to be seen early. Azov shifted attention away from vehicles and toward behavior, trails, engine heat before dawn, repeated use of the same narrow approaches. Patterns that emerge when speed replaces protection. Instead of waiting for the assault, drones went hunting for preparation. Once that happened, speed stopped being an advantage. It became a tell. Darkness used to protect movement. Now it exposes it. Thermal cameras under small drones rewrote the rules quietly. Engines glow, fresh positions bloom. A generator meant to stay hidden announces itself like a flare. Azov's pilots don't chase heat blindly. They read change. A road that warms too fast. A tree line that wasn't alive an hour ago. Shapes that cool in patterns nature doesn't make. Night stops being cover and starts becoming evidence. Russian assaults that once waited for darkness now slow down inside it. And that hesitation, more than any strike, is what kills momentum. At this point, it's tempting to think this is just clever frontline adaptation. It's not. What Azov is doing breaks a deeper assumption embedded in modern militaries, including NATO. That assumption says drones assist maneuver. Azov flipped it. Here, maneuver assist drones. Infantry waits until the air picture is clean. Armor holds until logistics routes are stripped. Assaults only begin once resistance has already been exhausted by machines. This reverses cost curves, risk curves, and training priorities. And it forces an uncomfortable question. If a brigade can reliably put machines 2 kilometers ahead of its soldiers, why would you ever send humans first again? This is the part that caught NATO off guard. Not the technology, not the footage, not the kill counts, the structure. A mid-income country under fire built something that looks less like a traditional unit and more like a battlefield operating system. Continuous feedback, rapid iteration. No loyalty to bad ideas, no patience for doctrine that doesn't survive contact. That's not improvisation anymore. That's institutional learning at combat speed, and it explains why NATO didn't just watch. It started listening. So far, we've seen how Azov denies assaults and adapts faster than Russia can stabilize. But the most dangerous part of this story isn't what happens at the front line. It's what happens after these lessons spread. Because once a drone-first doctrine escapes a single brigade, it stops being a tactic. It becomes a future. Here's where this stops being a story about Azov alone. Because nothing about what you've seen stays contained to one sector for long. Wars don't spread ideas through conferences or white papers, they spread them through survival. And once a method consistently keeps soldiers alive while stopping advances, other units don't ask permission to copy it. They ask how fast they can learn it. That's exactly what started happening. To understand why this began to matter beyond Ukraine, you have to see what it looks like when the system works under pressure. Picture a Russian advance forming outside a battered town. Vehicles staggered instead of massed, motorcycles probing ahead, electronic warfare already active, artillery warming barrels in the rear. This is supposed to be the moment where defenders brace. Azov doesn't. The first thing to move isn't infantry. It isn't armor, it's air. Recon drones lift before the column ever rolls. Not high and obvious, low, quiet, spaced out, watching approach routes rather than targets. They don't rush. They let the Russians reveal themselves. A truck idles too long, a motorcycle pauses where it shouldn't, a radio repeater flickers on, then off, then on again. The picture builds. Only when the movement pattern is clear do the strike drones wake up. An FPV cuts the lead motorcycle. Another hits the communications vehicle. A third finds the logistics truck that was supposed to stay hidden. Nothing explodes dramatically at first. What happens instead is worse. The column stops without knowing why, and a stop column inside drone range is already defeated. By the time Russian commanders try to reassert control, the routes behind them are compromised, their communications are fractured, and their timeline is gone. No breakthrough, no charge, no glory, just momentum bleeding out into the dirt. Offensive operations live and die by tempo. Speed hides weakness. Movement creates pressure. Delay invites collapse. Azov doesn't fight the assault head-on. It fights the clock. Every drone strike isn't about destruction. It's about forcing a pause. A pause means engines idle. Idle engines glow at night. Glowing engines get watched. Watch targets don't survive long. By the time infantry would normally clash, the fight has already been decided by machines. That's not just effective, it's demoralizing because from the Russian side, nothing feels heroic, nothing feels decisive. Units don't lose in a blaze, they just fail to arrive, and failure that feels arbitrary spreads doubt faster than fear. This is where the story stops being just about Ukraine. Most Western ground forces still train drones as attachments, sensors, helpers, precision add-ons that support maneuver. Azov flipped that logic completely. Here, drones are the battlefield. Infantry and armor only move once the air has already been softened, stripped, and mapped to exhaustion. Instead of asking how to protect troops from drones, the question becomes something far more uncomfortable. Why are troops exposed before drones finish the job? That inversion doesn't just challenge tactics, it challenges procurement, training pipelines, command structures, and career paths all at once. Azov didn't wait for permission to solve that problem. They waited for necessity. And when Ukrainian drone operators began bringing these lessons directly into Western training environments under programs like Operation Interflex, it wasn't theory being taught. It was frontline reality, EW avoidance, FPV mission design, night thermal interpretation, adaptation measured in days instead of years. The realization wasn't dramatic, it was structural. The real shock isn't that Azov's system works, it's that it works cheaply. A few $1,000s per drone, sometimes hundreds, against vehicles worth millions, against systems that took years to procure. When that math holds day after day, it stops being a tactic and starts being an economic argument. And economics wins wars quietly. According to pre-war doctrine, this wasn't supposed to work, yet here it is, working anyway. At this point, Russia isn't the only one with a problem. If Azov's model scales, then entire assumptions about armor density, air defense placement, logistics depth, and infantry exposure start to crack. And that's where the story becomes less about Ukraine and more about the future of warfare itself. So far, we've seen how Azov denies breakthroughs, absorbs countermeasures, and forces NATO to rethink doctrine. But there's one final layer that makes this system truly dangerous. It's not just that it works today, it's that it learns faster than its enemies can adapt. Here's the part that makes Azov's approach so dangerous. It doesn't wait for perfection. Russian countermeasures arrive slowly, tied to procurement cycles, approvals, factory output, doctrine updates. Azov adapts inside the fight. When jamming thickens, pilots switch control methods. When thermal masking improves, strike angles change. When convoys fragment, the drones stop hunting columns and start hunting habits. Nothing about the system is fixed long enough to be targeted. That's the trap. Russia can counter a drone, it can counter a frequency, it can counter a tactic. What it struggles to counter is a unit that treats iteration itself as a weapon. Every failed Russian adjustment becomes data, every missed intercept becomes a lesson, every destroyed truck rewrites the next mission profile. By the time a counter reaches the front, Azov has already tested 3 ways around it. That speed gap is fatal. Because modern war no longer rewards whoever brings the most steel to the line. It rewards whoever can change faster without breaking cohesion. Azov's unmanned systems battalion didn't just add drones to the battlefield, it rewired how decisions are made. Pilots become planners, operators become analysts. Commanders learn to trust machines not as tools, but as terrain. And once that mindset spreads, you can't bomb it away. That's why Ukraine didn't stop with 1 brigade. The creation of a national unmanned systems forces branch wasn't about headlines. It was about scaling this logic across the entire force, turning battlefield hacks into institutional muscle memory, making adaptation permanent. That's the real reason NATO is watching closely. Not because Azov is unique, but because Azov is early. If future armies fight the way this brigade already does, then the front line isn't a trench anymore. It's a moving cloud of sensors, relays, and disposable killers that exhaust the enemy long before soldiers ever meet. And once that future arrives, the question won't be who has the biggest army, it will be who learns the fastest. Azov already answered that question. The rest of the world is still catching up.